23 stab wounds. This wasn't an execution. It was a ritual, a bloodbath in the marble heart of Rome. The man who believed himself a god, Gaius Julius Caesar, lies bleeding out at the feet of a statue of his greatest enemy, Pompey the Great. The irony is brutal. The assassins, senators, men who had dined with him the night before, raise their bloody daggers. They don't flee, they shout. They called themselves the Liberators. They believed that on this day, the Ides of March, 44 BC, they had saved the Republic, that they had cut the head off the serpent of tyranny. In their arrogance, they thought the people of Rome would pour into the streets to cheer them, to thank them for returning their freedom. But the people did not cheer. The silence in the forum was their first death sentence, a heavy, dense silence, thick with fear. Not fear of the dead tyrant, but of them, of the men who had unleashed chaos. Why did the people they claimed to have saved meet them with terror, not flowers? Because the average Roman didn't live in the senators' villas. They lived in grim reality, and Caesar, the tyrant, had given them stability, victories, and bread. The Liberators, on the other hand, offered only an abstract idea of freedom and blood, the brain behind the plot. Gaius Cassius Longinus, a man consumed by personal resentment, and the face, the symbol, Marcus Junius Brutus, Caesar's adopted son, the man whose betrayal dealt the mortal wound. It's said Caesar's last words upon seeing his face were not of anger, but of pained surprise. Et tu, Brute. You too, my child? They believed they had won. They marched to the capital. They barricaded themselves in, waiting for the city to recognize them as the new fathers of the homeland. They underestimated one man, a man who hadn't drawn a dagger, but whose words would be sharper than any steel, the consul, Mark Antony. And worse, they underestimated a ghost, a name. Hundreds of miles away in Apollonia, an 18-year-old boy, sickly and unknown, receives a letter. He is informed that his great-uncle, Julius Caesar, has been murdered. But that's not the news that will change the world. The real bombshell is in the will. Caesar has adopted him as his son and primary heir. That boy, ignored by everyone, will become the incarnation of vengeance. He didn't just inherit Caesar's fortune. He inherited his name, and with that name, a blood oath. His name was Gaius Octavius. His arrival in Rome would mark the beginning of the end for every one of the 60 men who plunged their steel into his adopted father's body. They didn't know it yet, but they hadn't killed a man. They had unleashed two monsters, civil war and Octavian. The hunt was about to begin, and it would not stop until the last of the Liberators had paid his debt in blood. For a moment, it seemed blood might not call for more blood. In a desperate move to avoid civil war, the Senate granted amnesty to the assassins. A fragile, tense pardon. Brutus and Cassius came down from the Capitol, believing they had weathered the storm. They even dined with Mark Antony, in a truce as false as the smiles on their faces. They had control of the Senate. They had the daggers. They thought they had the power. Their mistake was allowing Caesar a state funeral. Brutus spoke first. His speech was a work of stoic logic, cold, reasoned, philosophical. He appealed to virtue, to duty, to the love of the Republic. He explained he didn't kill Caesar out of hate, but out of love for Rome. Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. The crowd, confused, nodded. They seemed to accept the terrible necessity of the act. The Liberators breathed a sigh of relief. But then, Mark Antony ascended the rostra. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. His voice was a whisper of grief that nonetheless carried to every corner of the forum. "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears," he began. "I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." He said Brutus was an honorable man, that they all were. He repeated the phrase over and over. honorable men. And with each repetition, the word honorable began to rot. It became a poison, a sarcasm as sharp as a razor. Then he bent down. He lifted the toga covering Caesar's body. The purple cloth, stiff with dried blood, revealed the 23 gashes. Look, through here entered Cassius's dagger. See what a rent the envious Casca made. And here, the beloved Brutus stabbed. He transformed a political assassination into a personal butchery. He made the crowd see not a tyrant, but a betrayed man. And then, the coup de grace. He pulled out a scroll of papyrus, the last will and testament of Julius Caesar. The crowd held its breath as Antony read that Caesar had bequeathed his private gardens to the people of Rome to be public parks forever. And then, the final blow. Caesar left to every Roman citizen, every man in that square, a sum of 75 drachmas. All hell broke loose. Brutus's logical speech vanished before the raw emotion. The people's love for their murdered benefactor exploded in an uncontrollable wave of violence. They ripped benches and tables from the forum to build a makeshift funeral pyre for their hero right then and there. Then, with torches lit from that sacred fire, the mob became a pack of wolves. They were no longer looking for liberators. They were looking for murderers. Their first victim was an unfortunate poet named Cinna. They confused him with one of the conspirators. It didn't matter that he pleaded, that he shouted he was just a poet. They tore him limb from limb in the street. It was the first payment on the blood debt. Brutus, Cassius, and the others saw the flames from their homes. They saw the people they claimed to have liberated marching toward them with torches and knives. Their republican dream had become a nightmare. They had to flee Rome like thieves in the night. They were no longer senators. They were fugitives. And as they ran for their lives to the east, the real danger, the young Octavian, was disembarking in southern Italy. He didn't bring an army. He brought something far more powerful, the name of Caesar, and a checkbook that would soon seem bottomless. And he was about to use both to buy the loyalty of Rome's deadliest weapon, his father's legions. While Rome burned and the assassins fled, Octavian played his own game, a chess match on a board of knives. He arrived in Rome and presented himself to Mark Antony, the new master of the city. Antony saw him for what he was, a pale boy, inexperienced, a mere nuisance. He refused to hand over Caesar's fortune, using the money to consolidate his own power. It was a miscalculation that would cost him the world. They underestimated the name. Octavian began to sign his name as Caesar Octavianus, a stroke of genius. To the people and the legions, he was Caesar. And when Antony denied him the money, Octavian did the unthinkable. He sold his own properties and family inheritance to pay the people the 75 drachmas the will had promised. He kept his father's word. Overnight, the boy became the favorite of the common people, and more importantly, of Caesar's legionary veterans. Hardened men from 1,000 battles who had worshipped their general. They saw in this young man the reincarnation of their leader. Octavian didn't ask for their loyalty. He bought it. He stole Antony's legions right out from under him. The tension exploded. Caesar's two avengers declared war on each other. But as they fought in northern Italy, alarming news arrived from the east. Brutus and Cassius had not been wasting time. They had plundered the eastern provinces, amassing a gigantic war chest. They had raised 19 legions, a formidable army financed by extortion and ready to march on Italy. Antony and Octavian realized a terrifying truth. They hated Caesar's assassins more than they hated each other. They met on a small island in a river near Bologna. Antony, Octavian, and a third man, Lepidus. There, these three men formed the second triumvirate. This was not an alliance. It was a pact of predators. They divided the world as if it were plunder, and then to finance their war and eliminate their enemies at home, they unleashed the terror. The proscriptions. This wasn't a simple list of enemies. It was a public death sentence. Hundreds of senators and thousands from the wealthy class were declared enemies of the state. Their names were nailed in the forum. Anyone could kill them. It wasn't just permitted. There was a reward. The killer received a portion of the dead man's property. The rest went to the triumvirate. Rome sank into a bloody paranoia. Slaves murdered their masters. Sons betrayed fathers. No one was safe. And on that list, Antony demanded one name above all others: Marcus Tullius Cicero, Rome's greatest orator. Cicero was not one of the assassins, but his speeches against Antony had sealed his fate. Octavian, who owed his political rise to Cicero, agreed. He sacrificed him without blinking. Antony's hitmen caught him. Cicero offered his neck. They cut off his head and his hands, the very hands that had written the speeches that so offended Antony. They were taken to Rome and nailed to the rostra, the very speaker's platform from which Cicero had so often spoken. The vengeance was total. With Rome purged and their coffers filled, the triumvirate turned its gaze to the east. The purge was over. Now the war began. The end of the Roman world had gathered on a plain in Greece called Philippi. This wasn't one army against another. It was one era against the next. On one side, Octavian and Antony, with Caesar's name as their banner and vengeance as their fuel. On the other, Brutus and Cassius, with the dying idea of the Republic. More than 200,000 men, the largest concentration of Roman military power in history, about to annihilate itself. The Liberators' plan, dictated by the cold logic of Cassius, was clever. Their army was better supplied and controlled the sea. Their strategy: wait, let hunger and disease wear them down. But Brutus was not a strategist. He was a philosopher forced to be a general, and he was tormented. Legend says that nights before the battle, a ghostly apparition appeared to him in his tent. "Who are you?" Brutus asked. The shadow replied, "I am your evil spirit, Brutus. We shall meet at Philippi." Was it the ghost of Caesar, or the ghost of his own guilt? Pressured by his impatient officers and harassed by his demons, Brutus imposed his will. They would force a battle. Cassius, against his better judgment, gave in. The first Battle of Philippi was chaos. On one flank, Brutus's legions, with unstoppable fury, crushed Octavian's forces and looted their camp. Octavian, sick, barely escaped with his life. From Brutus's perspective, it was a crushing victory. But at the same time, on the other flank, the story was radically different. Mark Antony's veteran troops shattered Cassius's legions. His camp was taken, his men put to flight. Two simultaneous battles with two opposite results, and in between, the fog of war. Cassius had retreated to a hill. He saw in the distance that a camp was being overrun, but he couldn't know it was Brutus's own men celebrating and looting. Then he saw cavalry galloping toward him. They were Brutus's men, coming to announce the victory. But in the dust and the distance, Cassius believed it was the enemy. He believed Brutus had been defeated. He believed all was lost. "Here," he said to his freedman, handing him a dagger. "Free me from this life." His servant obeyed. Cassius covered his face and received the blow. He died, according to legend, using the same dagger he had used to stab Julius Caesar. Defeated, not by the enemy, but by a tragic illusion. When Brutus arrived and saw the body of his friend, his spirit broke. He called him, through tears, the last of the Romans. Cassius, the brain, was dead, but Brutus, the soul, still lived. For 3 weeks, the two sides watched each other. In Brutus's camp, morale had collapsed. His legionaries began to desert. His officers demanded one last battle. Brutus, the idealist, was no longer in control. He was trapped. The Second Battle of Philippi was not a battle. It was a massacre. Brutus's legions charged with desperation, not conviction. They met the hardened veterans of Antony and Octavian. The Republican lines broke. The dream of the Republic died, with the sound of thousands of men running for their lives. Brutus escaped into the nearby hills with a handful of loyal officers. He was a fugitive, cornered in the dark. There, in the cold night, Brutus knew it was over. He lamented that virtue, for which he had sacrificed everything, might be nothing more than an empty word. The idealist had crashed against the wall of reality. He would not be captured. The humiliation of being paraded through Rome was a fate worse than death. He asked his friend Strato to hold his sword, with the point facing him. Strato obeyed. Brutus used his last strength to run and impale himself on the blade. He died instantly. The soul of the conspiracy was extinguished. When Antony's men found his body, Antony, in a gesture of unexpected nobility, removed his own priceless purple cloak and covered his enemy. He called Brutus the noblest Roman of them all. Octavian did not share that respect. His reaction was icy. He ordered Brutus's head to be cut off and sent to Rome to be thrown at the feet of the statue of Julius Caesar. Octavian's vengeance knew no nobility, only total annihilation. With Brutus and Cassius dead, the world thought the war was over, but not for Octavian. For him, vengeance was not complete. Not until every single one of the 60 men on his list was dead. The Great War was over. Now, the silent hunt began. For the remaining assassins, hell was just beginning. Gaius Trebonius, the man who had detained Antony outside the Senate. He thought he was safe as governor of Asia. He was captured, tortured, and beheaded. His head was used as a football by soldiers in the streets. Decimus Brutus, not Marcus, Decimus, one of Caesar's closest friends, the man who convinced Caesar to go to the Senate that morning. A devastating, intimate betrayal. After Philippi, his legions abandoned him. He tried to flee disguised as a Gaul. He sought refuge with a Gallic chief he had once called a friend. But loyalty has a price, and Decimus's head was worth a fortune. The chief didn't hesitate. He murdered him and sent the head as a gift to Mark Antony. One by one, they fell. Publius Casca, the first man to stab Caesar. He fled Philippi and wandered the world, tormented, until he killed himself in an unknown location. His body was never found. The hunt lasted for over a decade. The last of them to die was Cassius Parmensis. After Philippi, he fled to Sicily. Then, in a final ironic twist, he joined Mark Antony, Caesar's killer and Caesar's avenger, united against Caesar's son. He chose the losing side one last time. After Antony's final defeat at Actium, more than 14 years after the Ides of March, Octavian's men found him in Athens. He was executed without ceremony. With his death, Octavian's list was finally complete. None of Caesar's assassins died of old age. Most died violently, and with every senator who died, the power of a single man grew until it was absolute. The assassins had stabbed Caesar to kill the idea of a king. In the vacuum they left, they had cultivated the birth of something far more powerful, an emperor. When the last assassin was executed, a strange silence fell. For the first time in 20 years, there was no civil war, but the peace Octavian brought was the peace of a graveyard. An entire generation of the Roman aristocracy was dead. The triumvirs pact, forged in blood, could not last. The last two predators, Mark Antony and Octavian, turned on each other. The final clash came at the Battle of Actium. Octavian's victory was total. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt, where they took their own lives. He was now alone, completely alone at the top. His father's assassins, dead. His rivals, dead. He held absolute, unquestioned power. And here, the final crushing irony of the story is revealed. The Liberators had stabbed Caesar because they feared he would be crowned king. They feared one man would destroy 500 years of Republican tradition. Their act, designed to save the Republic, was the very catalyst that destroyed it. The wars they unleashed annihilated the political class that sustained it, leaving a power vacuum that only one man could fill. Octavian had learned his father's lesson. He did not declare himself dictator for life. He did not wear a crown. He was far more clever. In 27 BC, he walked into the Senate and, in an act of political genius, he resigned all his powers and declared the Republic restored. It was a brilliant farce. He kept the appearances of the Republic, the consuls, the senators, but he concentrated in his own person all the real power, control of the army, the finances, the provinces. The Senate, grateful for the peace, granted him a new name, Augustus, the Venerable One. He became the first emperor of Rome. He ruled with more absolute power than Caesar had ever dreamed of, and he did so for more than 40 years. He died of old age, in his bed, deified as a god. Brutus, Cassius, and the others had killed a man to stop a king. The result of their sacrifice was not freedom. It was the creation of an emperor and the birth of the Roman Empire. In the end, they didn't save the Republic. They only ensured that everyone who believed in it died, leaving the path clear for the new order. Their fight for liberty was the very stepping stone upon which Augustus built his throne. The 23 stab wounds on the Senate floor did not prevent tyranny. They just chose the tyrant.